Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of our special series that is titled 9 Women in 90 Minutes. My name is Astelie Ngarambe, and I will be your host. Our guest today is Astelie Ngarambe, who is a brand builder. I will let her introduce herself. Astelie, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Arcia. My name is Astelie Ngarambe, and I am very passionate about helping African brands, both owned by Africans or run by Africans, create a big brand feel. That's really my passion.
Awesome. And today, there's a specific topic that I'd like for us to touch on, which is around ageism, right?
Mhm.
Before we get into it, do you mind sharing with us how old you are or how young you are for context?
Yes. So I'm 28.
Okay.
I'm very lucky to have a uh, 10 years experience in marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've worked on both ends of the spectrum with marketing, so both on the agency side and today on the corporate side. So yeah.
Cool. So 28, I know you had some big titles there where you're working right now, which is
Mhm.
going to lead me to our first question, which is
Mhm.
around ageism in leadership.
Mhm.
So, elderly and youthful employees, they sometimes experience age discrimination in the workplace. So, for you, Astelie, as a young woman in leadership, how does stereotyping or discriminating against individuals or groups because of their age impact an organization?
Whew. So prejudice of all forms, first of all, is very unfortunate, and particularly in Africa, ageism is something that towards young people is something that every organization, I believe, needs to stand up against,
Mhm.
mostly because 70% of our population in Africa is below the age of 30. So, which means that we are going and we will have a big percentage of our workforce that is quite young. So, the impact of ageism and prejudice against young people is, first of all, mental. I think a lot of young people, they really believe in themselves. If you've met, they believe in themselves and when they're starting out.
Mhm.
And although this is not the right way, but some of them require some form of validation. And when they're in situations where their voices are dismissed or they're denied a voice
Yeah.
within the workplace because of their age, because we have to respect elders, not talk when they're talking and things like that. This has um, terrible impact on an organization because first of all, there's risks of organization wasting time. So, for example, you didn't take into consideration um, the input of one of our younger colleagues,
Mhm.
and we're wasting time fixing a problem that could have been avoided. And then obviously this has ripple effects on revenue and so on. So it's quite serious.
Yeah. I like that you said that discrimination of all kinds is unacceptable. So, to women, to young people, to old people, to different types of
Exactly.
representing people, that everybody plays a role and everybody needs to be able to be given that space to have a voice.
Mhm.
So, Astelie, aside from age, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about single or unmarried women, right? They also
Mhm.
face an additional layer of discrimination.
Mhm.
Is that true? And yeah, talk about that. Is that true?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's the norm,
Mhm.
but I feel that there's some implicit prejudice that single and married, which is basically single, but
Yeah.
single women and women without children face. So there's the implicit and there's what is also explicit. So yes, I would say that it's true in some instances. Yes.
And so when we are considering competency, for example, in the workplace, right? What qualifications are important for people to focus on? And how can we start adjusting and adapting our mindsets to be more inclusive and welcoming to all?
I'd say first off, in terms of qualifications, there's the general set. So they ask people to give proof of competence in their role. I think that is, and I'm not a very traditional person, but most people would consider that, people have their degrees or they have their certificates to associate
Mm.
their role. But one thing that I think is extremely important on top of that would be, the ultimate value that someone can deliver on their role. I feel that whether, someone is single, married, has children or whatnot, ultimately the value that they deliver within the business is what ought to be taken into consideration when it comes to compensation, when it comes to benefits. That is really what is most important.
Yeah. And how do you, so for example, if I'm somebody who is just, my mindset is so focused on this is, for example, a male job, or you can only go home early because you have a daughter. And since you are single and don't have kids, you have to work until 10. So what, how do you help someone like that work through that mindset?
There's always going to be, for every revolution, there was always one person that was brave enough to have tough conversations. And so, first of all, I would tell this person to find a support group. And a support group doesn't necessarily mean 5 people, but it
Mhm.
means probably someone who's probably not necessarily in the same situation as you, but has been able to thrive some way somehow. Or even now, we are lucky enough to have the internet. There's all kinds of platforms and where you can seek where you can seek some form of feedback. So I would first of all suggest that. The second thing that I would suggest is, as I mentioned before, every revolution started with one person who was brave enough to have the tough conversation, would
Mhm.
be to then, raise your voice and have that uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, the reason why this is extremely important is that, lucky now in this day and age, there are all kinds of memes, even the memes that are quite serious but are funny. So you can use a lot of mediums to share what you're currently experiencing. So humor is one of the things that you can also use to more or less get your message across. So I know this is not the very traditional way of fixing, but these are things that I've advised other people that I've taken into consideration myself and that have actually worked.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant because then you just have to notice that not everybody absorbs information the same way. So I feel maybe as young people, or even just other type of people, we need to be creative in our
Mm-hmm.
communication style. So to
Exactly.
close
Yes.
off, I'd like to ask you one last question, which
Mm-hmm.
is what advice or wisdom would you give to your 19-year-old self?
Oh, there's plenty. But if I had to pick one, that's mostly career focused, I'd say dare to ask. One thing that I also tell my younger siblings is that, as much as you think that people care about you within your family, people have lives, they think more than that. So you have to dare to ask for raises, ask for promotion, ask for your raise. So that is something that you always need to consider. dare to ask.
Thank you so much. Be brave enough to ask. Those are words from Astelie, a 28-year-old brand builder with over 10 years of experience already, crushing goals in the senior management suite right now, and just telling us that we need to be able to use our voice and don't be afraid so that we can all be able to live in a more inclusive community and working professional society. Thank you so much, Astelie.
Thank you. I'm so glad you had me here.
Cheers. Bye-bye.